Hey everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online Paddle School. We are back here on YouTube, and this week we are completing our three-part series talking about preventing power slippage in the kayak strip. In the first part, we talked about creating shapes. In the second part, we have talked about holding shapes, and now we are going to be talking about directional forces and their influence on the success of your strip. Directional forces is how we approach both our movement and putting that energy into the water. A very common mistake with paddlers is they go through the motion of paddling. So they're very meticulous about moving this joint and moving this joint, but they're not directing their forces to move their boat. Having a concise understanding of what you're trying to do with your movement to achieve a tangible end result is the result of mastering those directional forces. So today we're going to break down all these directional forces joint by joint through the body. If you want more in-depth information with visual guides and access to a coach, K2NOnlinePaddleschool.com has all of the resources necessary to help you understand these bigger concepts and apply them to your paddle stroke. Paddling overall can be very complicated, with the stroke being broken down into the setup, the catch, the power, the exit, and then breaking down the upper body into the top arm, the bottom arm, the hips and torso movement, as well as understanding your leg and heel drive in a Surfski. Putting those ideas together in an easy to digest format is the success of the K2NOnlinePaddleschool.com video series. So without further ado, let's jump right to it. So today we're going to start looking at our directional forces from the ground up. We have talked a lot about the creating shapes and holding those shapes by using our upper body to push downwards on the water below us. Every platform of directional force that we produce, we need an equal amount of counterforce for stability to create that energy off of. The more stable that this counterforce is, the more power you can produce with the moving parts of your body. A great analogy for this is deadlifting an object off of the ground. We're using our upper body to stabilize and lock into position while our lower body extends and completes this motion. The more stable the platform that you are on, the more weight you can inherently lift. Try to deadlift 400 pounds while on an unstable yoga ball as a surface, your success rate is very low. Having a solid concrete platform to allow yourself that opportunity gives you the most maximal energy transfer. Having a stable platform with the upper body allows the lower body to engage properly as you ascend. In paddling, we're looking at this in reverse. As our upper body starts coming down on the water, we need an equal amount of force driving our body upward. Without this force driving upward with the lower body, it means that our upper body will continue to collapse. Collapsing the torso gives us no energy to push on with the upper body. Only by creating an upward force can this downward push be more effective. If everything collapses towards the water, there is no tangible directional force that we can derive from that. So again, going to the deadlift bar, if you reach down and grab that bar and your whole body just collapses downwards, you've accomplished nothing. You have to stabilize and come up with that resistance. Paddling is very similar. As we are met with that resistance, if our whole body folds and collapses as water touches the paddle, we are not directing our forces properly. The purpose of the leg drive is to create that upward lift as you are completing the stroke. As the leg extends, it allows the hip to come back and keeping this shape, what we talked about in holding shapes, between the hip and the rib cage. Keeping this spacing here as we extend allows the upper body to come up. Keeping the spacing as the leg drives allows us to create this platform as we drive upward with the legs. This is the biggest importance of the leg drive. Having hip motion is one aspect, but we're creating a tangible upward force with the lower body as you are driving your legs. This is what we're looking for. Many paddlers go through the motion of leg drive and their hips move a little bit and their body just continues to collapse on itself. There is no upward drive between the hips and the torso here. This leg extension must create a directional force coming upward. So the counterforce to this upward drive with the lower body is, of course, the hands coming downward onto the stroke. We talked about the top hands pathing, and now we really want to think about the bottom hands pathing as well. Both of these hands should be going in the direction downward towards the water. The most common mistake here is paddlers pulling their blade too close and going through this canoe-style stroke like so. We still want the paddle to drift away from the boat, but our pinky and our bottom of the hand is going to drift towards the water as we are completing the stroke. We don't want this hand to go up to the side or pull backwards and come upward. As we are creating the upward force with our lower body, the upper body now has a platform to effectively drive downward. Take advantage of this directional force. The more your upper body creates lift upwards through the torso, the more effective your upper body can be pushing down on the water. All of the directional forces that we're creating with the upper body is coming downwards. We have a video on tensioning your paddle. So as I hold my paddle, it's not tension. My energy and elbows are going upward. With proper directional forces, my hands and elbows are coming downwards like so. Having this all oriented puts tension on the paddle, and as we tension through the stroke by holding the shape, our directional forces now complete by pushing into the water. The lower body creates an upward lift, the upper body compresses down on that platform. The next directional force that we're going to look at is going to be the pushing and pulling mechanic of going forward and back. So currently we're talking about upward force and downward force coming together. Now we're talking about the rotational relationship coming forward and backwards in front of us. My favorite analogy for this is thinking of the steering wheel, but as we're going through this, the steering wheel is now oriented this way, almost like a forklift. As one side of the steering wheel travels forward, the other side now pulls backwards, and this is the rotational relationship that we need to understand so we can utilize with our movement. Stemming from the leg drive, we're thinking about the hip. As we are starting the stroke, the knee comes forward, the hip comes forward, and all these joints have now come forward in this direction. Understanding the stroke is knowing that the blade is going to travel backwards in this relation. We can abuse this by bending at the elbow and pulling things too close and not utilizing our upward and downward force. But ultimately the paddle is going to travel in this direction backwards like so. Starting the stroke with the rotational forces set up coming forward. And the best way to think about completing the rotation is as you're completing the stroke is thinking about the opposite side joints that are all back behind you coming forward as you complete the stroke. If we think about these joints too much, we may isolate and only use them like so. By thinking about the joints that are on the opposite side of the body, allowing them to come forward completes that steering wheel dynamic of the top arm and hip coming forward. Now all of these joints have now traveled forward or in the front of the body. The rotational force as we're setting up is the right side of the body on this right side stroke coming forward, and completing those directional forces is the opposite side of the body coming across like so. Push all these joints to the front. As you set up for the other side, these joints are all set up for the next stroke, resetting, creating the shape, holding the shape, mastering those directional forces. All these joints have now come to the front, and you can see the synergy of the kayak stroke going back and forth. Going through these different directional forces is kind of like rubbing your stomach and tapping your head. If we fixate on just one, the other one might follow and do the same thing. Or if we fixate on the opposite one, we might just be tapping the whole body. What this means is as we are compressing downwards, if we fixate on that, everything comes downwards. If we think about pulling up too much, right? The bottom hand pulls, the body sits up, and now we have too much upward motion. If we only fixate on one half of the body as we go through our rotation, we may only use that half of the body and not use the other side to its maximum together. Now, putting all these ideas together as we go through the stroke, we have downward pressure with both hands. The lower body's leg extension is creating an upward lift. And as we're doing this, the hips are swiveling and rotating. The joints on this side of the body are going to come forward as we go through. It is a lot to unpack in a motion that you will complete in less than a second. The online resource at the K2NOnlinePaddleSchool.com gives you an extensive video library that you can work through, as well as off-the-water exercises that you can complete that train your muscles, but also trains your brain to go through these movements more fluidly. Combine that with a video review resource that you can use anytime to make sure that your technique is translating properly from what you're learning. With 24/7 access to a coach, you can ask questions, have them answered in a timely manner, and make sure that you are progressing properly. The stroke is a highly optimized, specialized movement pattern, and it is very learned. If you're just trying to wing it, you will more than likely fall astray in your progression. That completes this video series here on YouTube. Next, we're going to talk about the kinetic chain of the body, and we have some other videos that are lined up in the future. If you have any suggestions for videos that you would like to see produced, we can get those out. Just send us an email, leave a comment, any way to get in touch, and we'll make sure to have those on YouTube in the future. And we'll see you guys next week when we talk about the kinetic chain.